the pictures in slide 80 really give me the feel of those years, those seasons of contemplation from 2006 to 2011. The one on the left with the twin trees, those represent mathematics and physics, so closely entwined that the roots and the branches are all meshed together. And the other two pictures are of a meditation hut that I built in Louisiana during the years of social work studies. And I put them up in the mountains in Colorado in a place that we had during that period of time. Those two pictures, one of them shows it in the summer and the other is in the winter when it's covered with snow. I went through those seasons going to that place a number of times. The taproots of mathematics and physics, this was an essential realization during that time, that the taproots of mathematics and physics are really, it's like one taproot that is in different words. Under math, we have sets composed of elements, and under physics, we have material composed of parts. Now, those words are different, and the material of the ideas are different. One is symbols, and other is material. But essentially, it's the same idea. And, they grew up together. They came from the same place, the same ideas that our ancestors had about this world around us. They thought that it was parts in composition, and the corresponding mathematics that grew started with sets made of elements. So that all is a little bit suspicious because there's something missing in that. That's the same taproot using different words. And that idea was what was contemplated for a long time. And finally, something emerged from that. And that's a point to be made. That emerged from inner ideas that come up from within. They come up from that depth, I believe. This brings us in slide 85 to the first transformational concept of Popper's, and the one that we mentioned in the preview. There you see it is the picture of a wooden word, relation. The physical relation is a concept that came out of those seasons of contemplation, and it means joined collective behavior of participants. It's that counterpart to the contemporary idea and to our basic inherent sensation that we live in a place where there's composition of parts. Well, this is a behavioral definition of the same kind. And the behavioral definition of a thing is a physical relation. It's joined behavior of participants. And when you think about it, every part you can think about is, in fact, a participant by virtue of the fact that physics has told us that the atom itself is a cauldron of behavior on the inside. It is a participant through gravity, if nothing else. So everything made of atoms, although we think of it as maybe an objective thing made of parts, it is also at the same time a behavioral thing that consists of participants participating together to form what the thing is. A thing is what it is by virtue of the behavior of its participants. This is an alternate meaning of the overused word thing, and it's much more precise meaning. If you think of a thing as a physical relation, then it encompasses much more than thinking of a thing as a objective material thing. And this applies, this idea of participants in collective behavior applies all the way from a single atom, which is a cauldron of participation on the inside, to a human being. We have deep human consciousness. So the idea of a physical relation is the first transformational concept that came out of those years of trying to figure out what went wrong with the story of Emily's relatives, trying to support it with mathematics. Slide 90 really serves to bring this idea of a physical relation into focus as it pertains to a mathematical relation. And the story is that the mathematical relations, which are measurement prediction equations, at least if we're talking about physics, mathematical relations mimic physical relations, which is the real thing. The reality is there. Physical relation is joined behavior of participants. And that exists apart from any descriptions, equations, or recipes about that. It exists. And that's true of atoms, of objects, of gravity. Gravity is a physical relation. It exists. We've discovered it through our work, measurement, prediction work. We've discovered that it is a physical relation, that the planets join in collective behavior. And the mathematical relations of physics give us recipes for measuring and predicting that reality of the physical relation called gravity. The validated equations of physics, the mathematical relations, those reveal and confirm the important physical relations and participants around us. But those are descriptive. They mimic the reality. And so that's where the relational intuition came from, is for dealing with the reality in an industrial context of physical relations. So in industrial work, I used the mathematical relations to gather data, to form descriptions, and to work as an aid in trying to understand the real thing, and that is the running equipment, the organization of people, the weather, the participants in the way a production facility works. So that's a really crucial realization that the reality exists there in the behavior. And physics does not really give us a taproot concept of that, of primal behavior. Now, just to expand on that a bit about the reflection that got there, on looking screen 95, it really came from Emperor's New Clothes kind of interpretation of the particle physics parade. An atom is not a composition of objective parts. It's a physical relation. It's a cauldron of collective inner behavior. Now, we have I think, language momentum from our historical idea of reductionism that has caused the physics community to use the term particle. They continue with the language of parts and composition. The word particle is a misnomer. Particle physics is really a study of participants joined in primal behavior. To poppers, these fantasy creatures from the toy physics universe, the word thing means a physical relation. Participants joined in collective behavior. And that includes every material thing and more. It includes every material object, but the physical relation is very inclusive. Participants may be distant from each other. Gravity is this kind of thing. It's a physical relation, collective behavior, with material participants that are separate from each other. They're separated in space. And so the idea of a physical relation, when you use thing in that way, then a thing called love makes sense. It has participants. And so you can ask, well, what are the participants of this physical relation? Just as you ask, what are the parts of this object? The difference between asking what are the parts of this object and what are the participants of this relation is that participants, identifying them, can expand outwards to include a bigger and bigger range of things, where material asking of what are its part is a reduction, gets smaller and smaller. In this slide 105, we're going to talk a little more about this idea of parts in composition together with the idea of participants joined in collective behavior, because the two things really go together when you're talking about material. The old reductionist quest said that if you had an object, a piece of material, then it could be broken down into smaller objects and then smaller parts and so on until you finally get to the bottom level parts that cannot be broken down. And those are the fundamental parts of our universe. So the idea is that there's a set of fundamental parts of which everything is composed. Well, the atom was thought to be that. And, there's an array of atoms. The periodic chart shows all of the different kinds of atoms. We thought of those maybe as parts in the beginning. But it turns out, that, as we all know, that an atom can be broken, but it doesn't give you smaller parts after that, even though they use this bogus word particle. What you get when you break an atom is behavior. You get this release of behavior, and it's those inner participants that are basically being released. Well, you might think, well, okay, if we're talking about an object and we think of it in terms of participants and participation, then you might think we could reduce it as well. Say, well, let's identify the participants. But in fact, identification of participants is often an expansion. For example, with gravity, if we look at a rock and we say, okay, gravity is a thing, and we look at a rock and say, what is that thing? Well, the participants in gravity is going to expand to all of the other rocks around it, and the earth and the sun and so forth. So neither one of those things, parts or participants, can be reduced in that way. And one way to resolve that is, as far as perception, we perceive them at the same time. If you look at the human body, you can think of the heart as an object. It's parts joined in composition. Or you can think of it as a participant. The beating heart participates in life. And those two merge. There's sort of a reverberating duality in that existence. So that gets to a deep idea. We've always thought, science has always thought, that material exhibits behavior. But modern physics, as it went deeper and deeper, it really shows us that, behavior manifests material as well. So they kind of exist as a reverberation. Material exhibits behavior, behavior manifests material. And that is the essence of it. So that's a little deep, but that is definitely something to ponder, and poppers understand it in that way.